in your world, you're now actually sitting, you don't have to name customer names, but you've got South African businesses that you go into, execs. What's the conversation? What's happening there? Do you need to convince them, or are they scared? Are they excited and you just need to enable them?
I think the word we've spoken about is trust. And I think if there's one thing the machines and everything can't do, it's that human-to-human trust. Right? And it's one of the reasons why I was excited to come here, because a lot of things I'm learning is just watching Dario. And I think I trust Dario. I keep saying I hope he's not like the South African cricket team that, you get your high hopes and then crushes your heart and he becomes like another silicone billionaire. But this trust, and that's the first thing. So when I walk in, the first thing is no laptops, no technology. Let's just discuss who are you, who am I. Just bring it down to the people thing, because I think the technology and the engineering is, I won't even pretend, the little course in 6 months or 16 weeks to try and understand. I would never say I conceptually maybe understand, but I don't deeply understand. But what gave me success over so many years in business was people, choosing the right person, understanding what the person's good at, when you can push the person, when you can't, etc. So the first thing I try and do is just who's in the room, so describing who I am, my background, and why I gave up, a very big corporate role, because I fundamentally believe this technology, I think my brother will go into something like this and will say 5% of the words, but he'll be half the AI summary, And he said that, AI, so everyone thinks it's going to change the world. I think it has the ability to change your world. So the thing is, when you go sit with the client, what is it that is their business pain point, Because when you walk in generally with a client, the first thing they can think of is they're like, I don't know, I pay Salesforce so much money and, I want to replace Salesforce. Like, Salesforce was built over so many years, an operating system. And the first thing to do is just say, listen, the technology is amazing, but you need to bring the human on, and the human, like we had to learn how to use mobile phones, we had to learn. And so the first thing I try and do is just, one, understand them, and then start with the simplest task that takes the most amount of time. Something like, I got 100 emails yesterday, which are the 3 that actually I should focus on? But starting to bring...
Assuming Copilot doesn't know.
Yeah, let's not talk about Copilot, because I think it's my biggest adversary, but also my biggest selling point, because when you show them what Claude, if they've been using Copilot and they think that's what AI is, and then you show them Claude Code, which, gets into your computer, reads your files, but has that, for me, the big trust thing, that yes, there's a contract in place, we won't train on you, all of that kind of thing. But I really do, like I say, trust that Anthropic want to do the right things. The one part of the reasons why they left OpenAI, Dario and his sister, not enough money in research, not enough money in safety. So there's that whole trust, and that's the first thing you're asking what I do with a client, is to form the trust, understand they obviously have these huge ambitions of what AI can do, and then saying, okay, but let's start with you, because you're not the software engineer or whatever, that, or the thousands of software engineers that Salesforce or whatever has, but you can build things simply, and when you build the thing, you learn. And I think that's the first step, that when you get them, that, okay, it starts learning me and using techniques, again, backpropagation is to train the model. This is just training who you are, that every time you talk to it, part of the onboarding I do is that just learn the person, but I make them aware of what it's doing. I think, when they say the product is free, then the word is you are the product.
Yes.
But even when I think about, obviously now you're trying to monetize and make money, it's almost like, okay, if I'll charge you X, but if you give me feedback, which is what these models need to know if it's working or not, I'll discount you, even if it's 100 Rand for the product, but I'm going to debit you and I'm going to credit you 100 Rand when you say, yes, I'll opt in, so that you understand the value. And that's another thing I'll give for free, is turn the training off. Rather pay the 400 Rand, which is what, like 4 cups of coffee, yes, than have your IP, that is who you are, being trained by, whether it's the Chinese or the Americans. Yes. That for me. So the first thing is just building the trust, and slowly start bringing in, the value it can add in the increments that a human can take in terms of the learning. So you have clients who are like, freaking whiz kids and, done stuff since they were at varsity, and and you have others who've been in, like 60-year-old, who's like hats off getting into this thing, but they learn at different rates, and you can't give the same onboarding to a 60-year-old who's, kind of been told you need to do this because the company's doing it versus a CEO, entrepreneur who's, flying and is just so keen to put this everywhere. It's two different.
I was wondering, is it the first, I was wondering about this last night, you guys will probably know, is it the first technology that started out being commoditized? All other technologies and stuff come out very specialized, only available to a few, and then over time, it gets commoditized. It feels to me like this one's the other way around, like it's commoditized first, so the most people are using the free version. When I speak to customers, and they try and bring two worlds together. The one is my business and my customers and my systems and my security and my data and my products and my services. And the other one is this reality of this, all of a sudden it's this super commoditized, everybody is using it, tool. How do I bring that experience into my world? Is it even possible to expect of a business to offer their customers this commoditized version of it? Martin, I don't know if you want to.
So I think there are lots of examples of tech that comes out as a commodity, and you could look at Edison way back when, and the idea was that it has to be commercially viable. So there's, us in the ivory tower would be doing research for its own sake, but even we folk would hope that it would have some impact on the world, right? But I think plenty of labs do work just for commercial viability. And large language models specifically, I mean, AI has been around exceptionally long, but large language models, we toyed around with Da Vinci and examples of, or models before, the big release of ChatGPT. So I don't think necessarily so. But what's interesting to me is that we have a technology here that commodifies language in a way. It treats language. There's this great philosophical idea that what technology does is it allows us to see, and this is good and bad, or maybe perhaps neutral, but it allows us to see things as resources. All right, so we could look at a river as a life-giving, sacred thing, or we could see it through the technological lens as potential hydroelectric power. So you can see how it's a kind of a disenchantment, if you like. It could be a beautiful primeval forest that sustains all this life, or this is potential planks or something. And now we see that same thing for language. Language becomes almost reserve to train a model. But what can we do with that? Well, we can code all of a sudden, because there's a syntactic structure to code in whatever coding language, and we can really easily translate something into the style or into another language, from Farsi over into Mandarin without any effort. So I think that the commercial angle has always been very close to, if not upfront, but it is a special technology. Yeah.
But I had a weird thought now. I was thinking, if I, as a completely layperson, think about AI, I love what AI can do for me in terms of saving time, fixing my grammar on a report. I look at companies and they this can ease up the mundane work, can read my 100 emails and tell me which one to do. But as a user, I don't know that as a general citizen, I don't know that I like so much that the company wants to use AI when I want their service. So it annoys me when I go onto a site and a bot answers me. It annoys me more to phone some call centers. But in general, I like more what AI can do in terms of decreasing my workload, opening up time for me, than me wanting to be the user of the company. I feel like I'm collateral damage if the company uses AI on me.
Why do you think that? Why do you feel like that?
I think it links to that trust thing that I don't know what they're going to do with what I type onto and what I ask the bot. I don't know what they're going to do with it.
And I think the business owner feels the same. he doesn't know if this model is going to talk to his customers in the way he would have liked as a human to have spoken to them.
But Rhys, wouldn't you say that that's probably your first challenge, is demonstrating benefit? Because people are using this. And I know some of my students that are in the commercial space are giving people software solutions with zero AI. They just use the word AI so that people would... Now we've added AI. So there's a little bit of sort of dark arts around it as well. But clearly you're demonstrating value is probably battle number one. Okay, they have to trust you, of course, but there has to be the utility.
No, 100%. I think, and that's why I say, like, my background over 16 years helped me a lot, because all I was doing was, this is my spend and this is the value I'm deriving. You know, whether it was fuels per kilometers or kilometers driven, everything was, you have to show value. And in fact, when I first went in, I struggled to price. Because I was like, I can't charge you until I can show you the value. So I've come with that complete mindset. But kind of also having to learn, you know, I have to charge 3 kids, you know, you need to make money. So this is where I'm at, but I want to demonstrate value and trust. So kind of what I'm doing is, don't pay me for the first 30, 60 days until you see the value. But once you see it, then I'm billing you for what I did, you know. And if you don't like it and you don't think it adds value, that's fine. And I have to take some losses. I mean, like I've said, if I sit with the right decision makers, I haven't had no. But I think the elephant example is so good, but I almost think it's more mysterious. It's almost like putting your hand in fog, because to your point, so many people don't understand. And even after a 6-month MIT course, I can't say I'm technically really not. I conceptually, you know, as you speak, I'm like, okay, I remember that concept. But it is, the engineering is very deep, you know. And then, you know, the layman person is just, what is going on? And then just start with the ML and the deep learning and then LLM, and then just most people are just like, whoa, you know. But I think why business owners struggle is, one, is what they are exposed to, which mainly is Copilot and ChatGPT, and Claude Code is just a fundamentally different thing, even though the people say, no, but look, Copilot's now using, you know, the same model as Claude. And I even looked it up. You know, Mercedes is coming first in the championship, and they're also coming 9th, but they both have the same engines. And it's what's the wrapper around it, and the fact that Claude Code is seeing your files, which can be very scary, that it's seeing all my files, but it's what then makes you know you that much more, like, intimately. So when you ask it a question, it has the context, you know, the memory of, this is who this person is and this is what they're trying to achieve. But your question, coming back to it, monetizing, I think, is obviously this AI race, you know, between the Chinese and the Americans. And what they were saying is the atom bomb, if you look at history, was, governments were funding these things. But now it's private companies. And, you know, not to name and get into politics, but, you know, one saying, no, it's all free and keep going. And then the next minute they're banning the model. And on the other hand, you know, the Chinese are going, you know, open source, you know, there's models for everyone, but, you know, who's behind it. So I think it's very interesting as a consumer to sit there knowing, okay, I'm going to pay the American models X, and then they won't train on me. Oh, but the Chinese are giving it for free, and I can download it. Yes, but you can't run it if you download it. And I think, again, it just comes to people who don't understand. You know, so that 3% conversion for me is just because they don't understand what it can do for them. And they're also thinking that ChatGPT or Copilot is what AI is, you know, or they're thinking an LLM is what AI. And it's actually this broader set of engineering that the more it advances, the more complex it gets in terms of what it, you know, the way it can do things, but the easier it is for us to interact with it. And that's, for me, creating this mistrust that, oh, it knows me so well. And I remember when I was first coding in January, vibe coding, you know, not a coder. I was like, man, this model gets me. Like, I've had this idea of the solar thing for 3 years in my head, or 4 years, ever since when I bought the solar. And because I'm a value person, I spent X and I want Y back. And I want to accelerate the return on that. So if I can get it to turn my geyser and heat the water, I don't have to heat it and all that stuff. It's like, it gets me. It's getting the concepts. It gets me. You know what I mean? It was that deeply unsettling. I've been talking to a machine sometimes for 10, 12 hours a day, and it gets me and it unsettles me. because I know it's a machine. I'm doing the MIT course and learning these concepts of how it's doing that and how, like the sufficiency, how it is trying to appease me because those people are trying to monetize. So if a model's always telling you wrong, even if you are wrong, no one's going to like something that always says you're wrong. So it's trained in a way to make you like it, which was Chat 4.0, which people loved, but it wasn't giving the right answer.
Yeah. Yeah. You made some notes.
Yeah, I'm also happy if you cut this. But as far as I'm concerned, there are no massive differences between the companies, the frontier companies, and their morals. I think there are lots and lots of challenges and things that we, as collective humanity, hasn't worked out yet. And I'm also a little. I'm aware of the fact that how the argument works, it's a sort of heads you lose, tail I win kind of idea. Whereas we say, this is a technology and it's amazing on the one hand. On the other side, this is technology and it's super scary if it's not us. So because they both feed into the same thing as you should invest and it should be us, whoever the us is. All that said, I mean, I agree with I disagree with maybe your position on the various companies. I think they're playing the same game with different strategies, and I think they probably have big personalities and lots of catfights among the CEOs. But actually, the moral compass is not massively different. But this point about it gets me, I think is super interesting because there we. In kind of complexity studies, you talk about a system that has lots of moving parts and it has path dependency and it has interaction with things outside and it has feedback loops and all of that. But the most important thing about a complex system is emergent properties, things that happen that you couldn't tell by just studying the individual parts. You put it all together and there's something more that comes out. And that, it gets me, feels emergent, right? They've just added more training and they've just added more compute. But all of a sudden there was this, somewhere along this kind of increment of improvement where it really now feels like it understands my instruction, it understands my desire. I think you folks talk about, theory of mind. It gets what I've got, the picture. Which, if you enjoy any form of technology, it really does spark joy, that moment. So it's disconcerting, yes, but it's also, wow, this is cool. And it gets it. So we've got this kind of tension between, it's an intimidating long game, and we would love that, the training was different and maybe on different data, and we would love everything to be, their biases and the data, all those things. And we should talk about those problems. We can talk about the environmental costs and all of that. But, that is in tension with this moment where you say, well, this is really cool. It does something amazing. And I've had that same experience.
But what if I don't want it to know me? So if I sometimes said I just try to outsmart it and I just lie to it and say random stuff so it won't know me that well.
But then the results you get are not that good. So it's this, and that's when I sit with them and I explain, because one of the first things it does is a deep scan on your data to know you. But I explain what it's going to do. And I think business owners are not so much worried about it's going to know me. They're more thinking, the spend is just trillions and billions and millions. But, if I'm not getting millions or billions or trillions back, it's a bad business decision, And that's why I start small with them and then scale them as they see the value of what they're doing. But they have to know that the first thing they do when I put it as part of the onboarding is it deep scans your data. And then it knows you. And then I think it's
assuming your data is you.
Well, I was telling yesterday about there's some,
computer,
again, I won't name clients, but there's prominent people, and the data's all over the place, you know, and this is on this 2012 MacBook, and this is on this 2017 this, and this is on my phone, but I want AI, you know, and it's like the first thing you got to do is clean the data, sync the data, make sure that the data is protected. You know, you've got POPIA Acts. If you're dealing with patients, you know, there's all sorts of you know, laws, and I think our laws are great in South Africa as long as they're implemented with the right ethics, if I can say it like that. I was at a Henley course a month ago, and I think once you start understanding the power of these and how to use them to train, you know, even if you're not training the model itself, you know, the weights and everything, but the training so that the output gives you what you're looking for. And then you look at the laws, you know, they're still trying to understand what AI laws should be and what they shouldn't be. So I think this is, you know, I can't remember when I was at varsity, but there was kind of the ethics as a group and there was ethics as an individual. And I think as you scale and you train and people get there, I keep reminding them that you'll sit there and have to make a decision at some point. Because you're going to get to a point where you now know how the power of these models and how to implement them. But you probably might have data that you shouldn't have or you shouldn't use in this way to monetize, you know. And it will become an individual ethical decision if you're going to use that to monetize, you know, because you will feel it, you know, and you will look at the law. And yeah, I think we disagree on the companies thing, which is fine. But, and again, I hope Dario is not the pro cricket team, but he said, you know, he spoke about research, he spoke about that, but eventually said he doesn't trust the leader. And that for me as I spoke is trust is the number one thing. And, you know, and it shows up in business with what happened with the Department of War. You know, where Anthropic said we have two things we will not do. And one is mass surveillance on our individuals, and the other one is hit a button and there's no human in the loop. And that's something else I'll train you. It doesn't matter. When you send the stuff out, it has your name on. You can't say, no, Claude did this or Copilot did this. It's your name. You know, it's your name on this piece of work or whatever you're putting out. So they say human in the loop, human in control or command is, I think, the marketing term. And he said, we won't do it. And OpenAI came and said, no, we'll take that contract. And that weekend, I think, yeah, the most downloaded app over the weekend was Claude, and the most deleted app was on OpenAI. And that's, for me, when I go and see a client, what you're trying to do with the trust, you know. And I think as South Africans, we're in a very unique positions for two reasons. I think one, our ingenuity around make a plan. You know, if you don't make a plan, you know, there's no fallback. You know, you have to make a plan, you got to get going. And you look at the personalities, a lot of these top AI and even individuals in the world are South Africans. And the way you use these models is, you know, like you once you gets to know you and you start writing skills, which is essentially just a list of instructions, and you put these instructions together, it's amazing what it can do. And the other one is, well, we have access to the American models and the Chinese don't have access to the Americans, and the American model don't have access to the Chinese. So we sit here being able to see both sides with this ingenuity. And I think there's an incredible opportunity, but Dario is worried that, you know, the economy globally grows by 7%, but Silicon Valley grows about 700%. And there's places that feel no impact of this massive economic potential boom, you know.
While you were talking about business and customers, my experience has been, and I don't know if you can technically elaborate on it, but when businesses get their teams to start using it, my old boss at Outsurance, Adams Gijs, he was actually a real scientist, and I told you earlier, when we used to sit in OpsCo and ExCo meetings to present our reports for the month, one of the things I loved him saying is your ink to data ratio is too high. You're using too much ink to explain yourself. And it seems like it's over-explaining itself, it's giving too much read work, too much. If I ask it a simple question, I just want a simple line, but it's giving me 2 pages of stuff to read. Why is that happening? Martin, why is it so over-explanative? And why is it taking... Because what I'm trying to get to is, if customers implement this to save time, but it's producing so much content that the people need to consume it to act on it to service a customer or something. Why is it producing
Okay.
something?
Yeah, sure. I wanted to talk about collective action problems and AI in the military, but I'm happy to go here. I also had a nice joke about a gulag, but it's a good joke. No, let's talk about this instead, or maybe we can circle back a bit later. Okay. So you could tell two ways. I can have the sentence, the cat sat in the mat, and give that to a large language model and say, start there and go on. And it would just, what is the next word? Because it's predicting the word after that. And it would write some story about the cat sitting on the mat. So that's one way that it could do. The other mode, if you like, is to say, I'm giving you the cat sat on the mat. Your first word must be the, and the last one must be mat. But I need 20 words in there. So it kind of bloats it for you. Now, if you think about students, when you give them a question, they do quite a lot of those filler text, the old chorrel, The reason why this is so significant is because this, all that nonsense. So that's, what is it, ink to
data ratio.
okay, so that's signal to noise ratio, right? Yeah. Tufte, the great guru of kind of visual education, spoke about data to ink ratio as well. So it does that. And the training that is given to this model, so the reinforcement learning through human feedback, reveals that that's what we want. So you don't want a laconic yes. You want, this is a genuinely novel idea. Can I, with a little summary of what about this is probably, novel or is going to sound novel to you. Yeah. Would you like me to elaborate or something like that? So a part of that is kind of attention capturing, and a part of that is to keep you on the thing so that you give it the next prompt for the next thing. But mostly it's what we ask it to do, or better put, it's like a human preference that we don't just get the laconic line. And that leads us to the whole field of AI slop as well, which is just the filler text. There's no substance, right? And obviously we see that as well in the information comments.
But it's interesting because if I'm going to prompt it to give me a speech for my grade 2 child, yes. I don't want it to say, that's wonderful, you're being a great mother, writing your speech on AI. But
which it will do.
But if I am asking it, my boss was really mean to me today, I don't know how to handle the meeting coming up, then I want it to do all the filler text and be validating. And
sure.
So it's like, it's a human preference in all of the, I can almost say like wrong ways. Like if we were in business, we wanted to go quick. But if we wanted to validate us, we enjoy that.
Yeah, 100%. But that is a learned behavior. It's reinforced. So you can, that's a pattern. And if it's a human pattern, that can be transposed into an algorithm, right? Mm. So if 95% of humans are likely to be, have a desire to be comforted if they say this was tough, then it trots that out regularly. And if you're an exception, then it can pick that up as well. And maybe back to your point about what if I don't want to be known? The idea of a collective action problem is if this is a pool and there's some fish in there, and if I fish my daily fish and you do one and you do one and you do one, and there's enough for tomorrow and the day after, and the fish will spawn again and all of that. Okay, but what if I want to fish 5 fish? If I want to cheat, if I want to shirk it, then I mess it up for everyone, right? So in the absence of a third party that says you are only allowed a fishing quota or something like that, there's an incentive for me to cheat, right? Okay, so that's a collective action problem because I affect all of us. So we have to all play by the rules. And privacy, or privacy if you insist, is like that. We have now had some interaction, so you have information on me and vice versa. So if all of you keep your lives private, but I reveal everything to AI, AI knows about you as well. So in other words, as a human collective, we haven't figured this thing out because privacy is sort of compromised. If your idea was, I want to unplug, I'm not part of the matrix, is we will be known, and that's, it does bring up a whole bunch of issues here, and I'm not here, saying, okay, well, here are the solutions, in my back pocket. But it is something we have to confront. Is my privacy is also a function of your privacy, etc.
Yeah.